All right, CDGers, I guess that's a word now. Today's episode is a special one. The team here at CDG thought it'd be fun to flip the script, so here we are. I'm being interviewed. Here's what's in store. I dive into the highlights of CDG this year, share some industry insights, and talk about what's next. Plus, they even hit me with some personal questions, giving you a closer look behind the scenes. My goal is that you leave this episode knowing me a little bit better and picking up a few insights along the way. And before we kick things off, a huge shout out to our amazing co-host, Kelly Stumpy, better known as the Car Mom. If you don't know the Car Mom, you better Google her. Let's do this.
Welcome to the Car Dealership Guy podcast. Not your typical host today, but instead you have me. I am Kelly Stumpy, and I go by the Car Mom over on Instagram, YouTube, and the podcast app. And today I am taking over the Car Dealership Guy podcast to bring you a very sought after, hard to land guest, and that is the Car Dealership Guy himself, Yossi. Yossi,
so hard to land.
Welcome to your own podcast.
Appreciate you doing this. Super excited.
I mean, coming off the heels of a pretty star-studded interview, verdict's out on which one's going to be more listened to. But I think your entire audience is so excited for you to sit down and for us to really get to know you. I mean, we had the reveal coming up on what, like 12 months ago?
Yeah, it was about a year.
Yeah, a year. And it's been a year of huge growth for the Car Dealership Guy, for your brand, for the podcast. And I think it's left people with a lot of questions. We found out who the Car Dealership Guy is, but we want to go a layer deeper. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So me and your team have prepared a list of a lot of questions, some personal, some business, some auto related, and you are in the hot seat. And don't think we're going to take it easy on you. I'm certainly not.
Let's do it. I'm ready. I don't know what to expect, but it's going to be fun.
Okay, so my first question is, your podcast is huge. It's such a well done podcast, and I'm a podcaster myself. And one of my big gripes with the Apple Podcast app or any podcast platform is you can't pin episodes. You have done so many interviews, but if you had a new listener of the Car Dealership Guy podcast, what would be 2 to 3 episodes that you would tell them to go listen to that you really feel are a good representation of the podcast?
Well, Kelly, I just want to say real quick, again, I really appreciate you hosting this for us and being here with us. This is truly incredible. You're an amazing creator. And for anyone that doesn't follow or know the Car Mom, Kelly, you got to follow her all over social media. You just create incredible content. Second thing, none of this we wouldn't even be doing this right now if it wasn't for this incredible team. And I mean that, and we'll get into that throughout this conversation. I'll make sure we get into that. But just looking at the screen is incredible because what was at one point only myself and a social media account has evolved into one of the fastest growing automotive media companies, period. And so this is, it's quite surreal. And when, I forget how we even came up with, I think Jay brought up the idea, hey, maybe we should flip the script on you. I thought it was super interesting. Initially, I was like, well, I don't want all the focus to be on me. We wanted to do a team thing. But Jay made a great point. He's like, but dude, you've done all these episodes, but you've never actually told us about yourself. And we did that reveal video, which you mentioned about a year ago, but that was a bit different, right? That was a bit more superficial, kind of the background. So anyways, I'm really excited to do this and hopefully I don't disappoint. All right. So to answer your first question, that's a tough one because it's like choosing your favorite baby or your favorite child. But I got to say, I think there's been several episodes that have been these seminal moments for the podcast. And each of these episodes, there's a common thread or theme where they introduce some element that we haven't had on the podcast before. And so I'll give you an example. If I go back really early, Brett Morgan from Morgan Auto Group came on the podcast and he shed light on all these things that were very taboo. For example, managing family into wealth, succession, employee compensation, right? He brought a new element to the table, which created a lot of virality and people took a lot of interest in. I'll give you another example, and I'll give you many more, but Liza Borges from Carter Myers came on and very vulnerably and authentically spoke about what it's like growing a 100-year-old dealer group or 100-year young dealer group, and the challenges, the personal challenges that come with that, whether it be, with her father or her husband. Again, that was an element that we haven't had prior to that. Doug E. Rowe from Longo Toyota, the largest Toyota dealership in the world, took us to a level of explain the level of tactics and excellence that I had not been exposed to previously of how they operate at their Toyota store, down to the little processes. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that the episodes that resonate most with me, and I believe the audience, are the episodes where people introduce a new element to the podcast that has not previously been exposed to our broader audience. And I think that's what is exciting for me and keeps it interesting because you never know what you're going to get. And I do have to give a shout out to Brian Benstock in his episode episode, which actually was our #1 episode on Spotify this year. Not all platforms, just Spotify, but that was another great example of providing a leadership masterclass, right? People listened to that and really felt like, wow, like they took in what it's like to be a leader and to put your dealership on intensity mode. So look, I could name, many, many other guests, but those are just some specific moments that I recall getting an outsized number of inbound from the community because of the specific reasons I just mentioned.
You do such a good job of getting such a diversity of guests within the auto industry. And I think your listeners really appreciate that. Maybe if possible, we can put those episodes in the show notes so they're easier for people to go back and find.
Good idea.
Hey, Michelle Amadeo here. Hey, Yossi. All right, Yossi, I need to know, if our podcast had a theme song, what would it be?
I think thematically, what I love about the industry and the Car Dealership Guy business and the podcast is the pace of change. When you look to speak specifically to the podcast, go look at the first episode and look at the fourth episode and then look at, today's episodes, whether it be the thumbnails, the type of conversation, things have really evolved. And I think that evolution came with clarity because we got to know better, who we are, what we want to be, right? We want to be the premier destination for insights for the auto retail industry, for dealers, for industry professionals. So I think thematically, while I don't have like a specific song, I suck at picking songs. I need to up my cultural index. But I will say just about speed and change, and it's just what we've experienced as well with the industry. As dealers, just what's been happening over the last couple of years, whether it be inventory levels, prices, and stuff, it all really ties together. So I think that's a pretty appropriate theme to attribute to the podcast.
So I'm hearing Unstoppable by Sia, maybe? A Porsche with no brakes.
I would love
I'm unstoppable.
I'm a Porsche with no
You don't want to hear me singing. I do sing in the shower.
I'm going to chime in here because,
Go ahead.
When it comes to radio, TV, or movies, pretty in the dark. He's very hyper-focused on what he does. So I've quoted probably 3 movies in front of Yossi. He's not.
It's bad. Jay, get closer to the mic.
Karaoke.
Oh.
We need Jake.
Wait, Sam, how do you know about my karaoke skills, Sam? How do you know about that?
Well, I heard you drop it there for a minute, and I have a sense that if we had some sort of a year-end party at the Car Dealership Guy, there would be karaoke, and it would be an incredible thing. I think Kelly would participate. You would participate. I feel like Michelle would be dropping a little bit. Steve would be, like, this whole group. I think there's some hidden musical talent here.
You know what's funny? That one of the things that I love doing is sometimes like upstairs, me and my wife, we have this crazy karaoke machine. Like, we used to have like the shitty one from Amazon that like you can't barely hear yourself. And then we realized that we love it. So we ordered this like super intense one. And we'll just like go crazy in the living room with karaoke. And then like the kids are like looking at us like, what the hell is going on? But it's funny you said that. I was like, have you been here when I did that? So I guess not.
Okay, as a fellow like creator / internet personality myself, I understand the hurdles it takes to take a personality and turn it into a brand. It's not very easy to do. I think a lot of the time it goes the opposite. It's a brand, and then the head of that brand then becomes the personality. But you did the opposite approach. You went from being an anonymous Twitter account to a multimedia platform. I want to know if that was always your goal. And kind of a weird question, but do you ever regret keeping the name Car Dealership Guy? Do you wish you would have rebranded? Do you think you ever will rebrand since the brand is now so much more than just you?
Great question. So I think a couple things. First of all, Car Dealership Guy today is a diversified media business, right? We don't consider ourselves I don't consider myself like an influencer, like a creator. Obviously, that's in my roots, and I still do it myself. But the point is, we're a media business. We have a newsletter, we have multiple podcasts, we have social platforms, we have a news site. We create videos. We do a lot of different things. So I think I'll tell you what I never wanted. What I didn't want to do is I didn't want to build something around just myself. Now it's pretty ironic because it's like, wait, the name is literally Car Dealership Guy. Like it's around myself. But what I've come to realize is that, I'm a very big piece of many things we do and create. But in order for us to make the maximum impact on this industry, to provide the most amount of insights, to really elevate the entire industry community, dealers, and to create, ultimately it's going to result in a better consumer experience. That's going to require a lot more than just me, which is why there's all these faces on the screen today and many other people that contribute to that, because I can only do so much myself. And so it just allows us to have more of an impact on the industry by a real legitimate business and not just staying small as like an influencer. Now with the actual brand identity, right, like the face and everything that we've kept intentionally, I think the beauty of that is never forgetting how this started. It started from someone that just had curiosity, myself obviously, but like I just had curiosity and I shared it with the world. It was something that was intriguing to me. It was fun. I didn't think too much of it. When I look back, I was sort of scratching my own itch because coming up as a dealer, I had no access to insight. Like I didn't know how to build a BDC. I didn't know the economics of a service department, right? I couldn't attend NADA Academy because I was an independent dealer, which is like where, dealers go to learn, become GMs and all that. So I was sort of stuck in this weird phase where the only source of information I had was talking to dealers at the auction. Eventually I kind of got, grew out of that and I was able to, get a better network. Eventually I also was able to, to join 20 groups. But even then, the 20 group is sort of limited. It's not every day. It's, once a month, once a quarter. And so I feel like the net result, which is where we're at today, is I'm scratching my own itch, right? Like I've created this platform where we can deliver insights to the broader industry so that people can always stay, on top of what's going on, have their fingers on the pulse and kind of, figure out where the puck is heading so that they can get ahead of it and, be the best. And as we say, stay ahead and stay informed. That is our goal. If we can help at least, one additional dealer every single day stay ahead, stay informed, then we've won.
So Yossi, for a long time, you were anonymous for the first period of time. You had a ton of credibility and people were super curious about who you were. As I talked to dealer friends, your decision to go public and reveal yourself met some interesting responses. Do you ever regret becoming known, or would you have continued to be anonymous? And do you see benefit in that in some way, shape, or form?
I don't envy anyone that is living with like secrets, because the way I felt at the time was like I would hop on calls with people, big people, and I would have to start explaining this story. And it's like weird. It's like, this and then that, and then you were anonymous. And it's like, I don't want to live like that. Like I want to, there's no price on, there's no price on peace of mind. Let me just wake up in the morning. Like the anonymity thing is like funny and cool and all that, but it just got old. I was like, I have way bigger ambitions, and to achieve them, I'm not going to do that anonymously. Like I gotta forge relationships with people. And I said like, I've gained this great experience. I've built a small business. I've built a big business. I've raised lots of capital. I've really kind of, I've succeeded. I've failed. I was like, I want to own that. I love my story. I want to own that. And I want to put it out there. And there's no better way to authentically tell your story than in video format with like a documentary style. And so I'm very happy with my decision and I'm glad I did it.
It's a beautiful path that you took from anonymity. You became ultra famous without a face, to the big dramatic unveil this past year, to all the growth you've had ever since. To Kelly's point, I agree. I don't think anyone in social media has probably had a trajectory like it.
No, it's incredibly impressive. And it has to feel good to know you built this audience, again, with just your thoughts and your knowledge. And I think when you started the podcast, you were such a good, and you still are, you're such a good interviewer that I thought it was just, to me, it was so fun. It was kind of like meeting your hero in person, like when you finally got to reveal yourself. It was just all very exciting. Great way to build hype for the brand.
I just want to say one thing, Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't view myself as any special interviewer. What I view myself, when people say that, like I think about like, why are they saying that? And I know you're authentic. You're saying the truth of what you really believe. So my philosophy is very simple. I'm very curious and I prepare. That's it. I'm very curious and I prepare. And of course I have industry knowledge and all that. But so when I go into an interview, I have to shut down the world. I got to put do not disturb. I got to lock my door. I don't want any distractions. I don't want any windows. I want to just look at the person and I want to get into their soul. I want to figure out like, who is this person? What is their story? What are they best at? How can I get them to, put their guard down, right? Everyone's sort of guarded. And, many people come onto the podcast and they're giving me these like canned answers, or they've done like other like, mainstream media interviews. And I'm like, let it go. We're at a bar. Relax. Like we're friends right now. Like tell me the time. Tell me how it is. So I think for me, it's just being incredibly curious and focused and just getting into your soul, looking at your body language, the way your eyes are moving, what's in your background, what have you done, creeping on your Instagram. I mean, whatever I need to do to find information about you so that I can maybe learn one little thing about you and extrapolate that into some potential questions.
You do a good job. I've been interviewed by Yossi, and I remember you asked me, I majored in equestrian science, which is a very unique thing, and Yossi knew that, and he asked me why the heck I did that. So definitely did your homework, and I think, I know you're curious, I know you do your research, but you also have this, you get other people curious about things. I mean, I know like I know a lot of your listeners are in the auto world, but I know you also have fans outside of this space that now find themselves like obsessed with all things auto, and that's because of the energy you bring to your interviews. So, you know,
And
that might
Kelly,
be the
you
nice
know,
to you on this, but okay, there you go. You're great. We all love you.
well, and I learned that from from a lot of other creators, but I think there's an art in simplicity. I like study simplicity. I find it fascinating. Like, how can you take a complex thought and distill it down simply? And I think the smartest people are able to share the most complicated things in the most simple way. And so I try to study that and figure out, how can I do that? How can I use smaller words, right? Constantly asking myself, you listening right now, do you know what I'm saying? I don't want to say a big word to sound smart. And if I have to say that big word, I want to explain what it means, because I want to democratize that knowledge. And I guess I just used a big word. I want to bring that knowledge and make sure that everyone understands what I'm saying. And so that's my goal. It's I'm learning every day, trying to just get better at it so that the podcast can appeal to more people, or at least give them the option that if they want to learn about this industry, there's no reason or excuse why they cannot learn, right? It's not that they can't understand me. It's not that they don't understand the jargon. It's that they don't want to. That's my goal.
If we were to dovetail on what you just said, Yossi, about learning, and you look back on your career, what do you think is a mistake you made early on that ended up teaching you a valuable lesson overall doing this?
Great question. So I don't view mistakes in like the big picture as actual mistakes, because, life is a big learning game. We know this. And everything you do is one step closer to the next. It gets you one step closer to the next. God works in crazy ways and mysterious ways, and you just have to trust the process. And I say that I really believe that, because, I went through a couple tough years after having raised lots of capital, have lots of people believe in me. The vision didn't quite manifest how I wanted, albeit the many years before that were very fruitful and were, almost a decade of just being on the up and up. But I love my experience, because, it brought me to this point. Here's what I'll say. I think knowing what you're good at, like growing up, right, in school and stuff, like we don't get positioned necessarily for what we're good at, right? We're in school, we go to many different types of classes and we get this like very generalist, broad knowledge. There's this like cultural thing where, like, hey, don't be bad at that. Don't be bad at this. I've completely reframed my mind on this. And I own today what I'm good at. And I also know what I'm not good at, right? I know that I am not the best person in the world to operate a logistics company. Guess what? Sam, who's on this podcast, Sam can operate a logistics company much better than I can, right? He's the COO of 40 dealerships. He can get down to the details better than me when it comes to daily operation stuff. Like, that is not where I excel. I didn't know that 5 years ago. I actually thought that maybe I was that guy. I came up in the finance track in college and stuff. I was in the numbers. But what I've learned is that my brain, right, I am more in the creative side, on the media side, on the marketing side. That's where I excel. And that's where I unapologetically believe, I am top 1%. And again, I don't say that arrogantly, because I'm also bottom 20% in like logistics and stuff like that. But I say that confidently, that today I know what I'm good at, and it's not like a stagnant thing. It's every day I work towards it. I try to get better. I learn from others. I don't come up with many novel ideas. Rather, I look at other people who I admire and I see what they do and I try to port it to what I do. And so I think, saying like, I know that I am very good at, let's say the marketing or the media, and I'm going to hone in on that and just get better at it. And I know that other things, like I am not a good accountant. I am not a good finance guy. I'm not good in the spreadsheets. Like, don't put me in the spreadsheets, because I will make mistakes. My brain won't function. I suck at that. But I do also know what I am good at. And so I think owning that earlier in life would have been nice, because I would have probably made some more profitable decisions throughout. But here we are now, and I'm glad to be where I'm at today.
So Nate, with the partnership team, Yossi, good to see you. First question is, what's one aspect of your job that you absolutely love but don't often get a chance to talk about?
This is a good question.
So I think I don't really get to talk much often about the business building. I love building business. Like, I just enjoy it, the process, like this creation. It's a super creative, fun thing to do. And I think that I would say the one thing that is a little tough sometimes, and people may not know this, but like people come to the podcast for a very specific reason. Yes, there's some entertainment, they enjoy it, but they come to learn, to get educated, to get insights. And I don't want to, and I don't try to really deviate from that much. I don't try to get into other things, and because that's not what the podcast is about. It's a focused series about very specific topics and insights. But sometimes I wish that I had, I wish that I also had the audience to talk a little bit more about the business building side, because truly, like what we've done here, what this team has accomplished, I mean, it's truly a story of just like scrappiness and resourcefulness, right? To to get surveyed and, be ranked among the top 3 automotive media brands alongside 2, century-year-old brands up there, and to do that in like 18 months from no fundraising, very minimal resources, just lots of great resourcefulness, being scrappy. I mean, it's truly remarkable. And frankly, it was just not something that was doable even prior to the internet, if you think about it. So I think the business, Nate, like talking about how we've done this, I think one day, not now, but like in the future, I would love to do a series about like how Car Dealership Guy was built, but like down to the tactics, the very, very, basic things that pushed this engine forward and allowed us to scale so quickly and effectively in a very short period of time. And I should say capital efficiently, because we really did this very efficiently. We continue to do it very efficiently. And I'm very proud of that.
I think it's always interesting when you have a company that is running off of no playbook, never been done before. Like there's not really, you have this niche, there was this hole in the market, and you've blown it up in ways people didn't know existed because nothing like it has existed before. So I always find brands and companies like that just fascinating. And I'm sure all of us and all of your listeners would love to hear any detail you guys would be willing to share.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you're kind of like exploring uncharted territory, and you're constantly figuring out like what is the next step. And that's kind of the entrepreneur journey. I think with this, it's even more interesting in that, these like creator-led B2B media companies are sort of like a new thing. And, it's like, what technology do you use? What do you do? How do you evolve? And how do you get closer to your audience? I mean, it's just very interesting how it works.
This episode is brought to you by Access Point Consulting. Cybersecurity isn't optional for dealerships in 2025. It's a necessity. The FTC safeguards rule requires dealerships to have a documented information security plan in place no matter what size dealership you're running. Requirements include risk assessments, vendor risk management, and qualified individual oversight of your information security program. A daunting task for dealers to take on alone. Access Point Consulting helps dealerships design, assess, and implement cybersecurity programs that not only meet compliance standards, but go above and beyond to keep your business secure. Peace of mind starts here at Access Point Consulting. Start your cybersecurity journey with Access Point Consulting by clicking the link in the show notes below.
I kind of wanted to add something, Yossi. Just we've kind of gone back and what you do, and obviously you try to educate and people tune in to learn from the podcast, and that's always our goal. And you should some of your favorite podcasts. But I think one of those things that you do as the top 1% would be when you get it personal, you really humanize automotive. Unfortunately, automotive retail hasn't had the best reputation and still doesn't. And I know probably half of us on, Kelly included, Sam, we're current or ex-dealers, and it's not the easiest business, and I think people forget that there are humans behind it, there are families behind. You mentioned Liza Borch's and 100 years of having and owning dealerships. So I think you do an excellent job with the podcast, whether it's equestrian science or talking about fam, but you really kind of humanize automotive. And I think another reason why people kind of tune in and watch.
I've spoken about interviewing. At Get a Car, we hired 200 people in under 12 months, maybe. It was a crazy hiring spree. So I had to get really good at hiring really quickly. Our entire team did. And by no means did we perfect it, but we, certain things we did well. On my end, what I try to do is, I just had no tolerance for like canned responses. And so I think that ported over very well to the podcast, where you sit with a human and you want them to, take the guard down right away. And there's many different creative ways to do that. One thing I used to love to do with investors, and this is not like, traditional interview, but with investors, I used to love actually when they would come to the office to meet, right? We were raising capital. I would hop in the car with them, same car, because typically they'd arrive in Ubers, and we would just go like pick up a coffee from Starbucks on the way to our reconditioning center. And the reason I love that is because it's a very personal moment to share with someone to, earn trust. It's like, you're coming to me, grab a coffee. It's the most basic thing in the world. Like, I'm buying you a coffee. It's just like, it's a little touch that's, kind. And it's like, okay, I don't have to be guarded. There's trust. So I think that ports over very well. And I always ask myself, how can I instill trust in the person who I'm meeting and let them be themselves? Because naturally as humans, we are very guarded in many situations. That's just, human instinct. So I really try to bring that out in people.
So Yossi, it's Steve Adrania from CDG Recruiting. You're talking about, you went down the people road and hiring and everything. And, that's kind of what we do at CDG Recruiting. So like, what's your advice to leaders fostering, high performance team culture? What do you feel has like helped you do that?
Look, I can only speak for what we do here and what I do. And, one of the things that I really believe in is I really believe in not trying to be like, quote unquote, normal or, balance. Like I'll tell you what I mean by that. I just think that to achieve greatness in anything and excellence, I actually have this tattooed on myself on my ribs. But like the tattoo says like, do what you do and do it well. So I believe in obsessiveness because I think that, I don't want to live a mediocre life and I don't want to be surrounded by people that want to create mediocre outcomes. And in order to do that, right, there just has to be a level of intensity and obsessiveness, right? It does trickle down from the top. And I think, surrounding yourself with people that buy into that vision, that also don't want to lead mediocre lives, that want to create something, that want to make a big impact, do something really well. I think that for me is really, really important. And so I would say intensity, obsessiveness, paying attention to the details as a leader. I mean, these things really trickle down. And I think it's extremely important for company building, for culture building. And I wouldn't want it any other way. So that's just a couple of my personal beliefs.
Hey. Anna, I'm the editorial lead here at CDG. And Yossi, as you're talking about your journey, I'm just wondering, like, you mentioned uncertainty, and I'm curious, like, is that when the self-doubt creeps in, or does it ever creep in? And if it does, how do you deal with it?
So this is a funny one because, all right, let me explain this. So I think one thing I heard a while back growing up was, the saying like, why not me? Why not me? And I really believe in this saying because I think that everything you see, like you go outside, you see these buildings, you see people, like it's just someone that had an idea that started and just worked towards it very consistently for a very long time. And no different in media. Like the media business is all about repetitions. It's sort of a game of like who can last longer. Like media is, how many reps can you put in? How consistent can you be? More than many, many other things, right? Like you stop producing content, like you're nobody. So for me, I've really tried to internalize this philosophy of why not me? And so whether it's reaching out to someone for a podcast, right? Like I reached out to the presidential candidates both to come on the podcast. And guess what? There was some dialogue there. Didn't end up working out. But the point I'm trying to make is like, why not me? Like if it's not me, who is it going to be? Does that mean I'm the most qualified? No. Does that mean I'm going to ask the best questions? No. Like I think there's some other interviewers that are better than me, but it doesn't matter because it's not at the end of the day, right? Like there could be the most talented person, but they don't keep pushing through and they're not going to get it. And so I just try to, like, if self-doubt creeps in something, I wouldn't say self-doubt. Like I don't really feel that way, but what I do sometimes feel with the right guests, I might be a little nervous. I'm like, am I going to ask them the right questions? Will there be flow? Will we have chemistry? But you just sit there, you just say, it's another repetition. I enjoy this. Like what's going to happen? Like, I'm going to say like the wrong thing. Like there's no risk. Life is, at the end of the day, like life is short. And it's like, I just try not to even let it occupy my brain. Go in, make my best effort, strive for excellence. Everything will work out. And of course, and I mentioned this before, but like be prepared. Because when you're prepared, you eliminate a lot of that self-doubt and, you go into things much more confidently. So that's sort of my playbook.
So one of the things, Yossi, that I've loved in working with you over the past many months is your authenticity and also your absolute attention to detail and prepping. I've learned putting content out there that is super fact-based, has a ton of good value to the listener. And I'll call out an authentic moment that you and I had when we recorded that intro where you said, hey, I'm bringing on this guy from the auto business to do a podcast and to share this car dealership guy brand that you've created. That was hard. And I saw authenticity. So I would almost flip Anna's question and not self-doubt, but you have so much pride and you're so careful at having created this brand that I think it was tough for you to say, hey, we can expand this, we can make it even better, and to give up just a little bit of the reins and not reins. But was that a vulnerable moment for you, Yossi?
Yeah, look, I think what makes things easier in all decisions is like, okay, what's the mission, right? Well, we want to bring transparency to the car business. And we know that the vision is we want to build this very large and, high quality platform for insights so that dealers and industry professionals can get ahead, be better. Will we achieve that? I kind of, hold the keys to the castle, or if we spread the wealth and we, enable other voices to be heard in other ways, in unique ways. I think the latter. And so I think that, life, decision-making in life get really nice when you kind of put the ego to the side and say, like, what's the mission? Like, what are we here for? Right? What are we trying to accomplish? I don't care who takes credit. Like, I want to be a smaller and smaller portion of this company over time. I'm always going to be creating content. I love it. I'm always going to be here, but I want to be a smaller and smaller percentage of the business as we go on. And I think that's success. Success is not me being, 100% of the content. That's failure, frankly. Success is if we can create valuable content, whether or not I'm involved in that creation process, so I'll have my values sort of instilled in that. But I think that's real success. And so, just staying focused on the mission and the vision, and that helps make decision making very, very, easy or easier.
Great answer. We appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, Yossi, I kind of want to move a little bit into the role of dealerships in the future. You've interviewed so many great people. You're really seen as like a thought leader in automotive retail. And I think a lot of your audience would like to hear kind of your take on things. So I first want to start off with just talking about digital retailing, because it's just been a complete game changer. Do you think we'll see a future where traditional dealerships adopt fully online models, or will there always be a place for an in-person experience?
I think that anyone that listening to this would be foolish to think that the dealership experience is not going to meaningfully change. It will. I have the benefit of just getting to speak with people every day, and so that helps give me lots of perspectives. If you look at the trends in our industry, right, the vehicle in general, used vehicles are becoming more commoditized. New vehicles becoming more competitive. Okay, number one. Number two, technology is evolving at an absurd pace, where we have these autonomous vehicles. You go to SF or Miami now, you have autonomous Ubers. You have, autonomous potential fleets for entry-level cars coming soon. The technology is already there. It's just about commercialization. Things will change. And I think that what we have to remember is that when things become more commoditized, when technology levels the playing field, margins compress, right? If we all have the same AI agents doing 90% of the car sale process, and we will get there, right? We're going to make less money. That's just how economics work. Now, what happens in that type of world, right? Well, what happens is we differentiate with brand. And one of the words that dealers have said a lot on the podcast lately, which I love, is the word hospitality. I think what dealers can do better than anyone else, of course, the best dealers, is they can offer experience that is like second to none. A really, truly experience that mimics, a great hotel or something, right? The best dealers do that. They leave you feeling wow, delighted. And so I think that those that can really focus on the customer experience, their brand, like the experience they provide to the consumer, and have that be, where they differentiate over long term, in my opinion, will win. Because when technology is leveling the playing field on so many things, the way you stand out, the way you bring that referral business will be, who you are and the type of relationships you have. And so I think I just really believe that that's where it's going. Now, to be a bit more technical with respect to the dealership, I think that the last 15 years were about variable operations, right? There was digital retailing, websites evolved and became more advanced. I mean, all these things happened. The last 15 years have been like a very hot and variable operations. I think the next 15 years are going to be a lot more on fixed operations. And I say that because if you just think about it, like listen to all the trends I just mentioned. All these trends put, more vehicles on the road that are, more vehicles that need service. Look at affordability, which is at all-time lows, right? People are holding onto their cars longer. What are people going to need, right? These fleets, people that are they're going to need more service. And so I think that I'm very bullish on the future of the franchise dealership. I think that you're going to just have many, many changes as dealers become more so on the new car sales side, more of like fulfillment centers that offer this great experience while selling the new car. But with other things, when it comes to the used cars and service, those will be really, really important areas for dealers to thrive in. And I just think the next 15 years are going to be very exciting in that space.
So kind of out of those opportunities and new things, maybe even some pain points, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that dealers are going to face today and maybe in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it would be foolish not to think that just reputation is not a big one, right? Like put a post online, see some of the comments. Like dealers still have a very tainted reputation at best, and at worst, a bad reputation. Now, again, it's not all dealers, obviously, but guess what? All dealers get grouped into the same lump sum and the same, the same name. And so you have to ask yourself, I think it was maybe Jack Ballinghall from my podcast or someone that you said, well, like, why did it get this way? And I think, a lot of it was self-inflicted. Like there's no doubt about it. But I think in a world where consumers are increasingly shopping online, competition is more, or the playing field is more level due to the internet, I think it pushes dealers to become better. There's that quote, I think, from Warren Buffett, which is like, or someone was like, the worst day in my life will be when my competition dies or, passes away. And it's not Warren Buffett. I butchered that. But the point being that, like, competition is a beautiful thing because it pushes us to be better. And so, the internet, while it brought all these new entrants and it changed, and margins came down, but it really did push, the industry to be better. That's when you suddenly saw the advent of all these transparency tools and whatnot. So I think that's going to be a really big area where we're just going to see a lot of opportunity for dealers and, improving reputations through transparency. I think in the long run will benefit dealers and consumers financially, from an experience perspective, reputationally, I think from all. And that's, by the way, that's why our mission is transparency, because I believe that is the silver bullet for this industry to, really lift all boats.
I'm curious, like, what in your opinion is like the biggest misconception about the auto retail industry that needs to be full on retired by now?
So I think the obvious one that I'm going to skip is that all dealers suck, or that they're all like, sleazy or whatever. I'm going to skip that one because that's tired and like, whatever. What I am going to focus on though is like who these dealers really are. I think one thing I've learned, I wasn't exposed to this, by the way, like this was an interesting one to me, but like dealers nowadays are very different than who they were 20, 30 years ago. And I mean that like they come from different walks of life, right? Just some examples. I had like Vince Sheehy on the pod, dealer principal at Sheehy Auto Group, 30 plus stores. The guy came from like the CPG world, like, University of Pennsylvania graduate. I had Jeff Swickard on the podcast from the West Coast. He came from like the tech background. The guy was like a tech entrepreneur before owning dealerships. I recently had a private equity executive on that came from the stock market. I mean, I'm talking about really big companies, obviously. Like it goes from big to small. The point I'm trying to make is like the modern day dealer is not who you think. It's someone that, is very entrepreneurial, is very focused on creating this experience for a customer when they're, making this big purchase, whether like forget the car is irrelevant. It's a very different type of individual. And I think that's been very eye-opening to me. Right? Now, I think that's a good thing for the industry because people from different backgrounds like this, from different industries, are going to continue evolving and creating different experiences. So Vince Sheehy has a very big thesis on customer retention, which just is, a fancy way of saying making sure that your customer who buys a car from you buys from you again, right? Now, think about it. Why would someone that comes from the CPG industry focus on customer retention? It's kind of genius because all these products that you may buy at Costco or whatever, they're all about retention, right? Like Procter & Gamble wants you to keep buying Palmolive dish soap forever and ever and ever. It's all about retention because these items are like, $10, $20. And so it's cool to see someone from that. And I never asked Vince if like that, his thesis on retention is from the CPG world, but I just have to imagine it is. Or look at Jeff, who I mentioned as well. He came from the tech industry and he's really crafted his dealership with this thesis of hospitality because, that's sort of what he was exposed to as a tech entrepreneur, like creating experiences. So I think it's really great for the industry that we're bringing in outsiders who are not maybe lifelong auto people, but bring different experiences and help us together, just rise and overall, improve the product that dealers offer.
Hey, my name is Cole Short. I'm head of content and creative strategy here at Car Dealership Guy. Yossi, we've worked on over 100 podcasts together over the last year. And, we've heard so many great perspectives on, what excites dealers about the future for dealerships in, their unique role that they play in the automotive environment. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
I think that one of the most exciting things is the time we're living in with just the growth of AI, because I think that it's going to make communication so much better. And communication is one of the biggest reasons for negative dealership experiences. And so I really do think that from taking that tech into perspective like that will be one thing that elevates dealers and puts them at a level of experience that they previously weren't able to offer. Think about what a dealership is, right? It's a facility that sort of has like 5-6 different businesses, maybe on average 75 employees at a dealership, at a franchise large scale dealership. And you don't have many redundancies. So if it's a Saturday and the showroom is packed and you only have 10 salespeople, guess what? Someone's sitting and waiting. But technology fixes that. Because if these customers that are walking in are able to do 90% of the process before they even speak with you, every salesperson can sell more cars. Everyone sits for less, fewer minutes, wastes less amount of time, and the overall experience is better. And so I think that I think AI is going to have such a meaningful impact on this industry for the better. And I think that it's really going to elevate the customer experience. It's going to make dealers a lot more efficient, and it's going to be a net positive for the industry.
Yossi, I think it's very encouraging to hear you speak for our industry and to not be scared of AI. You know, it's penetrating so many different industries, and I think a lot of other people are, oh, so scared. What does this mean? And you're like, hey, it's here. It's happening. Here's how we're going to work, and here's how it's going to improve the customer experience. And I think it's very encouraging to, one, hear your emphasis on improving the customers, which in turn improves dealerships' reputations. And it's a refreshing take. I don't think there's enough people out there educating the good of AI instead of just focusing on how scary it could be and not how helpful it could be.
I think fear is not going to make us more profitable, sell more cars, or improve our experience. I think the reality is this is the current situation. And, I'm a capitalist. I just say, okay, like, how can we use this to our advantage? I just view it very unemotionally. And so if I'm writing a newsletter on AI or whatever, it's like, okay, or like EVs, for example, like I've written about, like, I don't care, like EVs, like, go up, go down. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It's very unemotional. It's like, what is the opportunity at hand? Is there an opportunity, and how can you take advantage of it? That's sort of how my brain works. So I think it helps you stay very grounded and see the good in things.
And I think it's our generation's version of the internet. Like I come from a dealer background, and my grandpa started a dealership. I want to move a little bit into balancing work, passion, and just kind of some more personal questions. I mean, this is the hot seat after all. So I think Anna's going to kick us off with a great question.
Yeah, ever since I started back in April, I've been wondering, like, how does this guy stay sane? Because he gets pulled in 1,000 different directions on any given day, has so many responsibilities. Like, he's so cool, calm, and collected on top, but under the surface, I'm like, are you paddling? What's going on?
There's another saying I like. I love sayings, if you notice, but they're like, a 20-minute walk solves like all your problems, or many problems, I should say. I walk a lot. Like, I walk and talk, number one. Like, this is very tactical, but truthfully, like, just walking and talking when I don't have to be in front of a computer or screen is super helpful, just to clear the head, right? Especially in the type of work we do, right? A lot of computer. And like I said, the other thing is, like, I don't stay sane many times. Like, I do go crazy, and I think that, again, I try not to be too hard on myself, right? Like, we're all human. We make mistakes. I've done a lot of dumb things. I think the key is to, like, I take it, I learn from it. I try to take deep breaths, like, between things, right? So what I've realized is, most things that we experience are not as good or bad as we think. And so when you take that into perspective, right, that really helps. And third, and by the way, like, these are things I really try to internalize. I say them to you because it's things that are top of mind for me daily. It's just like my operating philosophy. Right, wrong, or indifferent. This is just what I believe. But third, company building is such a messy process. You're making mistakes, errors, this is sloppy. And so you just have to remember, like, I really avoid, like, a cynical perspective on people and life. And I think most times that serves you very, very well. Sometimes you'll get burned, but people want to do good. And if that doesn't work, or if we make a mistake, I just think it's because maybe there was some miscommunication, maybe they didn't fully understand the task at hand. Maybe they just made a mistake. So I just try to lead with that, take a deep breath, step by step. And guess what? And I always say this, if we can get 1% better every single day, that's going to compound at an exponential rate over time. And we're going to keep on winning. And so I know I kind of threw a lot at you there because, I am a very messy person. I'm pretty chaotic at times, but that's just kind of initial, like, thoughts that come to my mind when I think about kind of staying sane and unapologetically owning my insanity at times.
One of the craziest things about the Car Dealership Guy platform is our direct access to literally thousands of dealership and automotive employees. So naturally, I often hear this question: CDG, can you use your network to help me fill an open role at my company? Well, now I can. Building on the success of my free industry job board, I'm proud to launch CDG Recruiting, a more hands-on white glove automotive recruiting service. Whether you're looking to fill roles in dealership management, C-suite, F&I, fixed ops, auto tech, SaaS, we take the hassle out of hiring by doing the heavy lifting for you. And here's the best part. We vet and screen thousands of candidates so you don't have to. And with our placement guarantee, hiring through CDG Recruiting is 100% worry-free. Our team has decades of experience and has successfully placed over 1,000 roles in the automotive industry. So if you're ready to find your next rockstar employee, try CDG Recruiting today by visiting cdgrecruiting.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Again, that's cdgrecruiting.com.
Yeah, no, I think it was a very good look into your mind there for a second. I think we're all like, wow, there is a lot going on in there, but a lot of good ideas coming from it. And I mean, the 1% better, I think, is such a tangible takeaway and so easy for people to apply that to so many different aspects of their life.
Yeah, it's Nate again. Yossi, you mentioned staying grounded a few times already, and family allows us to do that. What's your go-to family activity or a tradition that helps you recharge at the end of a busy week, which I know you have plenty of them?
Yeah. So I think, I have young kids, almost 4, 2.5, and 1, and 2 girls and a boy. And I think it's very interesting because we're going through this phase, Nate, that you've already experienced, but it's like they're evolving, like, they're doing like the more sophisticated puzzles and all this stuff. So I love to do things with them that don't involve screen time, frankly. That's super fun, like puzzles, magnet tiles, those things are amazing. But one thing that's recently been really cool has actually been bringing the girls into the studio and recording with them. Just like a fun recording, like anything, being in, it's funny because this is in front of a screen, right? But like putting them in front of the camera and just like letting them see themselves, just be natural, just do things, whatever. That's been super cool. And it also gives them a connection to what I do. It makes it sort of real. It's like, oh, so this is what you do. Like you record stuff. So that's been really fun. And, when I grew up, when I was growing up, I went to like auctions and stuff, right? Like they don't have that privilege, but they do have at least the opportunity to, experience this in a digital format. So that's sort of my way of bringing them to work and having fun together.
Yossi, I love that. I have similar ages of kids. I have I have 5 kids, 4 and under. So me and Yossi are in the thick of it for sure. And similar though, like I love bringing my kids in on my work, and like my son really wants to be like a YouTuber because he watches this YouTube reptile guy. I know they're young, but are there roles that you could see them in?
So I wouldn't encourage them, and it's not specific to the auto industry. I just don't think I would encourage them like to do anything specific. Me and my wife are very aligned on this. We just believe in exposing them to many different things. I don't know, like I was brought up in the car business. I didn't have a choice. And by the way, at no point did my family or did my dad like make me do anything. Although I felt this like, I still felt this like pressure, like responsibility, almost like I had to help. The family business, we didn't come from any crazy means. I had to help. I'm privileged that my kids just realistically won't have to, to help this thing. And so I think that I want to expose them to as many things as possible. But here's the kicker. I do really believe, and I mentioned this earlier.
I want to talk a little bit about, it's a media company. You're many things. You also are a content creator. So I want to talk a little bit about partnerships, collaborations, and kind of what that means for the auto industry. So for the first time ever, I really feel like the world is getting a very raw look into car dealership life, thanks to the many creators out there who are now creating content, what it's like to work at a car dealership. The world seems to find it fascinating. Their content is blowing up. They're getting, big views. Because of the views, we think that there's obviously a pretty big customer appetite for what actually happens in the sales office, how a deal's actually structured. So I want to know, how important do you think it is for manufacturers, tech company, and dealers to utilize the power of social media?
Look, I think if you look at the future, or actually let's start with the present, right? Let's look at the data first of all. A poll, I don't know if it's a Gallup poll, but recently they put out a poll that like distrust in the mainstream media is at an all-time high. It's actually surpassed like distrust in politicians. Okay, that's number one. Number two is just like distrust in institutions, right? These are just like secular trends in our society. Okay, what's happening in this situation? People are increasingly flocking to these like more niche sources that they trust more, and in many cases, those happen to be creators who get their distribution through social media. And so I think the financially responsible and just plain, like, I don't even say smart, but like reasonable decision that any brand that wants to grow nowadays needs to at least consider is to be on these platforms, right? Social media is no longer like a want to have, it's a need to have. It's how you put your face out there. It's how you build trust with your communities. It's how you showcase and you document organically what you are, what you're about, your values, what it's like to deal with you. And so I just think brands that are not embracing social media, the creator economy, will just fall behind over time. Now, yes, you might have some proprietary distribution in the short term, or you might sort of, you're on cruise control from like more legacy forms of distribution that you have, or some brand equity, whatever it is. But the point is, over time, that's where the attention is at. It's all about attention. That's not like a novel thing for me. It's just an obvious thing. Like, this is a game of attention. There's many, many different sources out there that command people's attention, but it's clear that creators and social media increasingly command more of it from the public. And so you simply want to be there in order to get that exposure. I think it's incredibly important. And I think that, those that that don't will eventually be left behind, and it will adversely impact their businesses.
I'm going to jump in here. So Yossi, listen, love you. I'm, J-Law, head of partnerships for CDG. I talked to you all day long, probably the first conversation in the morning to probably your last one before it's family time. But honestly,
Jay, you call me. You're like, yeah, so I'm working on this deal, and there's like 3 wars behind me. There's a diaper with like poop to the right. There's like someone like peeing on my ear. It's like a fire over there. I'm like, Jay, what's up? So anyways, I just wanted to tell you that it's epic.
Speaking about that, it's funny because I don't have children. I've never put a car seat in a car, but I'm a huge car mom fan. I love all your content, Kelly. So I think a future Instagram episode would be me trying to figure out how to put a car seat in a car, having never done it before. So just let me know. I'm available. But I kind of wanted to that brings up an interesting question, because you guys are both influencers in automotive. You both create content online, but it's very, very different what you guys do. So the real question is, if you had to switch roles and Kelly had to become the car dealership mom for a week, or Yossi had to be the car dealership dad, or the car dad, who would do a better job adapting and filling each other's shoes?
Well, there is a truck dad, by the way. The truck dad is happens to be Kelly's husband. He's also very handy. You should follow her Instagram and just see all the stuff he puts up around the house. It's pretty incredible. Well, look, because I disqualify from being a car mom, I don't think I could do that one. I got to tip my hat off to Kelly on this one. That she could probably do my role better than I can do hers. But I really got to say, it is pretty incredible, because it's funny. Like, she's a very multifaceted creator, and I say that because I'm kind of like only automotive insights. She is automotive insights for consumers, and with like day to day, like obviously moms and things that really appeal to mom. But then she has this other side where she's like talking about like just life, and so she's balancing 2 different parts in her day to day. It's not just like, let me talk about just cars and make a woman's car buying process easier.
I am about 1 hour and 3 minutes into being the car dealership guy, so you could say the roles have been switched, and I think I'm doing an average job. I think this is just such a small like blip of the business, though, like being like hosting this podcast. And I think one of the things that you've done incredibly well, which I would actually love for you to speak on a little bit more, like for my own personal gain, is building a team, because I have done a very bad job of expanding my team. It's me and my sister and like 2 like contractors who help me with my emails and my website. But you have built an incredible team, and I would love if you could just share, how you delegate, how you grow, how you trust people. And if this needs to be like another episode, that's fine. But just give me like the elevator pitch, something I could take away on how I could grow a bigger team.
I think from I want to be very specific so that it's not kind of pie in the sky. For me, I spoke earlier about like identifying your weaknesses, but I think it's understanding, okay, what can I be best at and what can I not be best at? And if I am not going to be the best at something, and my time could be spent more valuably doing something else, like I need to find someone to, that's better at that, enjoys that, and that they can do that. So I don't know, it feels to me like it's simple, and I know it's not. So I don't want to be like flippant about it, but I think it's just, you really being honest with yourself. That's a big thing, and saying, okay, like I need to focus on this. How do I get great people who are, first of all, good humans, right? Like that's the first thing. Good humans that I enjoy. Like we all talk to each other all freaking day. I need to actually enjoy this, talking to this person. That's like the number 1. And then number 2, it's like, are they competent? Can they really do the role? And can they do it well? There's one more thing. And that is, I do believe in being very hands-on and close with your team. In the past, when we grew so super quickly, I would say even too hands-off on my prior companies. And I think that the reality is, it's like, again, company building is like creating art, right? Like you need to be there. You need to be in the details, right? It's everything. It builds culture. It builds relationships. You solve challenges together, right? You problem solve together. Like I really believe in being in the detail. And so now the funny thing is, like you say, well, you're delegating, like in theory, you have less control. And it's true, you do. But I think, again, if you find the right people that care, they will absorb kind of what is important to you and understand that. And that'll show up in their work. It might take some time. There might be a little learning curve, but I really do find that, people want to do good, at least the people that I try to surround myself with, and that, they'll pick it up, they'll take it on, and, they'll excel over time.
While I have the mic for a little longer, I want to talk a little bit about some podcasting behind the scenes. I mean, this podcast is huge. It's got to be one of the best things you ever did for CDG is starting this podcast. I think, and as someone who has a podcast, I think one of the best unspoken perks of having a podcast is the networking you get to do. Because
100%.
some of your guests, they might not have sat down and called you for 45 minutes, but as soon as you throw the word podcast in there, people start saying yes. You're like, no, it's for my podcast. And just like I did, where I asked Yossi personal questions that I wanted to know, it's kind of a perk of having a podcast. So I want to know, after you've done 150-ish episodes, is there a common thread amongst all the episodes that stands out to you? Is there something that makes these people someone who you would want to interview?
I think what I look for is pretty simple, actually. I look for experts. I want to find someone, when I see a human, I'm like, okay, what are you an expert in? And the crazy thing is sometimes you speak with people and maybe they're not aware of something that they're an expert in it, but you sort of bring it out of them as you learn more about them. So I would say I look for experts in our industry. Everyone, I mean, you could be the lot attendant, but you might know how to organize that lot in the most efficient freaking way possible to streamline that. You get what I'm trying to say? Anyone can be an expert. And so when I speak with someone, I want to know, what do you know, deep knowledge that the majority of the world does not know? And I want to expose that. So that's the common thread I look for. And so, and Jay could tell you this and Nate could tell you this, but when they pitch, different podcast guests, the first thing I want to understand is okay, what specific knowledge or insight can they bring to the table that that other people are just not privy to or have exposure to. That's one of the most important parts for me.
And so speaking of, finding people's it factor, expertise, things like that. I mean, we spoke about it a little bit earlier, but just to give you the compliment again, you are an excellent interviewer. I listen to a lot of interview type podcasts and yours really, really stands out. I want to know what the prep looks like, again, for my own personal game, but I got you on the podcast, but I want to know the really, don't just say you research, what's the granular, how much of the questions do you come up with on the fly? How much do you have written down? I want it all.
It's funny because different episodes, or every episode is so different. I could get into an episode where we freeform the entire time, but I do have a prep sheet, and I could get into an episode where we go pretty well through the topic list. The reality is it starts with the team doing some preliminary research and getting info on this person, getting the basics, bio, who are they? Then together we identify what are they an expert in, right? So again, depending on the guest, we'll see, okay, what do they know really, really well? I mentioned earlier, I don't know, Brian Benstock, right? So we know certain things about him, but we know that he is, very much into leadership. This is something he takes pride in, having a high performing team and whatnot. And so the next thing is then saying, okay, what do I want to know about this? If I was competing with him today, what are the types of questions that I'm just curious about? And this is where I legitimately just explore my curiosity. I'll take a basic skeleton that the team will provide, Michelle, Jay, and from there, we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, I want to know this, I want to know that. With certain guests that maybe I have a little bit more of a knowledge gap, I may actually tap other people in my network that we'll have good questions for that guest as well. So I'll use my network for that as well. But then when it's all said and done, I'll take it and we'll try to build a little bit of a story arc to it, which just means that there's an art in navigating a discussion in a nice way where it just flows and the topic feeds to the next topic, right? I don't want to just have someone on the podcast and just go question by question and it's all fragmented and disjointed. That's not fun. I want a story. I want to start with the human being, right? Personally, 10 minutes. Who are you? I want to know. I want to get to know you a little bit deeper. Then I want to get into the business side. Give me some insight, what's on your mind nowadays? And then I like to close in a very big picture way. And so, very simply, right? It's preliminary research. You do I prepare a topic list with the team. From there, I really sit and thoughtfully kind of put my own very specific tactical questions, sprinkle them throughout. And lastly, I make sure that there's a story arc to this outline. And everything I'm saying is not complicated. It's literally one sheet of paper. But this gets me that when then I go into the conversation, I'm confident, I'm prepared, and I know where I want to take this guest for the most part. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But at least this is the structure where I know I'm going to create a compelling piece of content and hopefully get the best out of the guest.
This is actually a question that was actually inspired by everything you just said. Have you ever had your notes in front of you and then the conversation goes in a completely organic different direction and the story was not at all what you expected it to be and it ended up just being beyond your wildest dreams?
It has happened. And I think those are actually some of the best guests because those are guests who are very unscripted, not afraid to be vulnerable, typically very authentic. And so, yeah, I would say it's, I love that, right? When I can just freeform and think about it. It's like, it is a beauty when I don't even have to look at the questions or my topic list and the next question just rolls off my tongue organically like that. Like, wow, that means you're a captivating guest. I mean, look, not everyone's going to be like that, but I think that it has happened, and it's fun when that happens because it just creates a more fun conversation.
So, hey, Yossi, it's interesting. Your ability to pull great guests has increased over the years, over the past year, definitely, including the likes of Ernie Garcia with Carvana and others. Who are some guests that you've pursued but haven't been successful at getting? And what's one question you would ask that one elusive guest?
So I think over time, at this point, like, I don't, how should I say this? Like, there's not many guests that like I think about, like, oh, I need that. And, by the way, I did really want Ernie, and we were in conversations for like a year to make this happen. So that's definitely one. And that's because, my background, it was kind of like a closing the loop in a way, closure or coming full circle, whatever. But I think I want interesting people, big or small, number one. I think that some of the best guests are like, the 3-store dealers, the 1-store, and vice versa. There is one person though, it's going to be funny to bring this up again because I tweeted about it, but I think Terry Taylor would be a fascinating guest. And Terry Taylor, for those that don't know, is just, a very, I would say, low-key dealer. But he also happens to own this big management company which works with all the dealers that he's partnered in and whatnot. I don't know too much about him myself, but I have heard enough stories, and I find him as a fascinating personality because he's just created just lots of enterprise value, built a very big organization, successful organization, and he's done it in a very low-key manner, very quietly. So anyway, and it's not just that. I think in general, I'm just think about it, like when someone is like super mysterious, like you just wonder like why. So sorry, Terry, if this kind of hits your inbox, is if someone in your team sends it to you. But I will say you should consider this. It will be something for the future, for your grandkids and whatnot, for future generations. It will be fun, and so Terry, you should definitely consider it. But anyways, that is definitely a guest that I would love to have on.
Is there the question you'd ask?
Yeah, I think I would start with like a why. Like he's not a dummy. He knows that I'm blanking on the word, is like elusiveness, but his mysteriousness leads to more curiosity. It's kind of like the car dealership guy effect. But I do want to respect, I want to respect his privacy and all that. So I don't mean to put him on the spot, but I'm just being honest. Like that is a guess that I'm just like fascinated to know his story, to know why kind of he went down this path.
So Yossi, we've talked a lot about how you've grown this CDG brand over time. What's your vision for CDG, and how does that vision fit into the automotive industry over the next, let's say, 5 years?
The best way that I've sort of adopted recently of like explaining the vision for CDG is we want to be in every dealer and industry professional's pocket. So what does that mean? It means maybe you listen to us, maybe you watch us, maybe you read us. However you consume us, we are a small part of your life that helps that, and we bring you 10x, if not more value. That's what we want to do. We want to, help you be better, provide you with insight, share that knowledge, right? Make connections, bring people together. Like, I really think that we have a very unique opportunity to do that with this platform. And it goes beyond, being the premier destination for insights. It's really being in every dealer and industry professional's pocket and being able to be a small part of your life, hopefully a big part, but make it just a little bit better so that every single day you can rely on us to learn something new, stay informed, and ultimately get ahead. And think about it. If we're successful, what happens? The car buying experience is better for consumers. Dealers are operating a lot more efficiently. Everyone is making more money, right? Cars are more reliable. Service is better. Like, people are happier. Like, everything just trickles downhill. And we have immense potential to make that type of impact because we have hundreds and thousands of people that are in automotive or related to automotive who are consuming our content. And so just the impact that we're able to make is massive, the potential. And we, every day, we say thank you. We don't take it for granted. We know that we have to fight every day for your attention and to do it in the best way possible. We respect every second of our listeners' time, of our audience, of our community. We try to really keep things simple. And ultimately, we want to add lots of value to the industry. That's the vision. And that's going to just continue growing and evolving. And it will manifest in many different ways. Today, of course, it's primarily content and media. Canada. We have launched a job board. Of course, our very own CDG Recruiting. Steven's here as well, these were, again, opportunities where we saw where we can add more value and help the community. And we're not done. There's going to be a lot of exciting stuff. So stay tuned because it's, going to be some really exciting years ahead.
That's awesome. And Yossi, it's cool to be part of this team. As I look at the 6 or 7 people on this call, it's a team of incredible individuals that are all dedicated similarly to that vision that you've created. And Michelle and I had a debate earlier today, and we're just curious who will win this debate. So the debate was, who has the coolest CDG sign in the organization? So for those listening to the podcast and able to see, mine's flashing behind me. Michelle, would you show us what you've got?
I was supposed to have like a really awesome sign and it fell. Actually,
okay.
I did. I actually had it up here, but it totally fell down. I had like an 8.5 by 11 paper
really,
right
Michelle?
there. And I really did. And in the middle of this podcast, I heard it fall and I was like, well, I don't want to put that back up.
Well, I mean, I'm going to have to avoid
CDG recruiting signs coming out, so
Yeah.
it's getting installed right now. So my sign might be a little better next.
Kelly wants a sign.
I'm going to have to avoid calling myself cool, Sam. So I'm going to give you the winner on this one. If you're listening and you've made it this far, I guess we were kind of, a little bit interesting. So appreciate that. You're amazing. Thanks for tuning in. We love feedback. So, Jay tells me I'm aggressive with feedback. So in my classic form of being aggressive with feedback, all I ask is that you email us one piece of feedback, one thing we can do better. That's how we get better. Really, everything we do, or many things we do, just come from the audience. People say, hey, you should do this. You should try that. I don't like this. I love that. It really, really helps. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed this.
All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much for listening. Yossi, this is my podcast for the day, so I will be doing the sign off. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Car Dealership Guy podcast. We're looking so forward to 2025. Please keep sharing some more, behind the scenes. I think episodes like this are so nice. There are so many people rooting from you on the sidelines, myself included. So I can't wait to see what 25, 26, 27, 28 hold. And thanks for having me, MC this episode.
Kelly, you're
And thanks
amazing.
for all the amazing
You are
team.
truly amazing. Thank you for joining us. You obviously did an
Thank you,
amazing
Kelly.
job, and I'm just such a huge fan of you and your content. So keep killing it. Guys, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time for the questions. This was awesome. All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.